A lot happened over the weekend. Some NFL news circulating. We got the OTA news headlines. Dalvin Cook gets released. Saquon Barkley doesn't report the minicamp. DeAndre Hopkins made a visit to Nashville that we'll talk about. And I sent Baby Gronk's dad to the sunken place.
Yeah.
So a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. Where do we want to start?
Let's knock out that Dalvin Cook, dude. The thing, we were talking about his stats a little bit before. Guy had 4 1,000-yard seasons in the last 4 years.
Yeah, he's a stud.
43 touchdowns. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. Like, Minnesota has the opportunity. They're a team that can go win it all. They can really do it. They have the wide receiving team, the wide receiving core. They have the quarterback. A lot of people don't think they have the quarterback. They have the quarterback. And Dalvin Cook, like, you're making them one-dimensional unless they have something in the backfield that we just don't know about.
Right. Or they, or they bring somebody else in, or who knows what's going to happen. But it's like the argument that's been circulating a lot more, especially recently with all these running backs. Like, you got Josh Jacobs not signing his franchise tag, Saquon Barkley not signing his franchise tag. This thing happens with Dalvin Cook. And a lot of the arguments that always happen year after year is running backs earn their keep in that first contract, and then the tread on the tire wears off. And teams usually make a bet, like, after that first contract's over, to not necessarily pay them. Like, not everybody's Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Derrick's kind of proving that he's
Derrick's
standing the test of time on popping out almost 2K yards every time if he's not hurt.
Yeah, Derrick is, I think there was a stat that came out that he's like the only running back in the last like 10, 15 years that has played better throughout his second contract than he did in his first contract.
Yeah, and he's somebody who gets better in the back end of the year too, like somebody who's built for December, built for the playoffs.
He's built for the cold weather.
He's built for the cold weather.
Florida boy, built for the cold weather.
Yeah, it's going to be, what I'm curious is if one of these teams, like the Raiders or even the Giants, right? Like, just strictly thinking the business side of it, goes after Dalvin and then releases or goes away from the franchise tag.
Well, once you
not release, but not offer the franchise tag. Like, let them go to the open market.
Once they said, hey, we're putting a franchise tag on you, I think they have to let him do that because he's gonna.
Well, they haven't signed. Do you really? Is that really the thing?
I think so. Now, I might be speaking out of pocket here, but I think when you do the franchise tag, when a team says we're putting a franchise tag on you, it's up to the player then to sign the franchise tag. They cannot play, but I don't think they can necessarily get out of it. I don't think the team can go, okay, fine, fuck it. We're not doing a franchise tag. We're not paying you. You're now a free agent. I don't think that works like that. But
man, I'll be curious. I'm curious.
Dalvin Cook was supposed to make this next year.
Here you go. Cook was set to make $10.4 million in base salary in 2023.
Got you.
That sounds better.
Just need a little
somebody for $2 million.
Yeah, need just a little update.
A little update. That's crazy. I don't know. I don't know what the Vikings are thinking. They must have something that we just don't know about. Or they're thinking about going to get somebody. Maybe they trade for a Saquon Barkley. Maybe they trade for a Josh Jacobs. But for me, it's like, dude, what is, I guess the next thing you'd have to look at is what is their salary cap issue after this? Like, is there a reason? They cleared $9 million, so they ate $1 million in cap.
And they probably think that they can go get a running back that can do just as well or within the range that they'd like to see for cheaper.
Did they draft running back?
Yeah, and he's solid. He's nice. Madison's nice.
Solid, but he's not Dalvin Cook.
He's still nice though. Like, he's still good.
Alexander Madison.
Right. And who knows how Madison will do with more of a workload. But again, that's always the argument of running backs, man. It's like, do you want to pay north of $9-10 million for running back when you feel like you could get, whether or not they say it's same production, but right, for cheaper.
The thing that sucks is that the running back market is in such a shitty position right now because it is so true that you can just look at the stats over and over again. It's like guys just don't do well after like year 6. Things just fucking fall apart. Give them the totes, give them the rocks that many times. Like, it's a fucking hard deal. You guys take a lot of hits and they just get slower and slower. You see it with every single person.
Right.
So
they've talked too, like there's always been a rumor every year about running backs, rumors and talks of them wanting to unionize and having their own CBA and being outside of the collective players one that we already have for everybody. Just because their position,
smart idea.
Right? Because their position is, they over the years they've trended down when it comes to paying running backs.
And Dalvin's such a receiving threat as well. Such a receiving threat.
I'm really curious about this franchise tag thing. If you can take it back.
Yeah, I wonder how you even look.
I wonder if guys like Deebo Samuel and all them are hurting the running back market because they're
That's a good
getting all
fucking
these
point.
touches.
Say that again, JP.
If guys like Deebo Samuel are hurting the running back market because he's getting the ball from so many different spots. He's playing running back sometimes. He's playing quarterback. He's playing receiver. It's kind of like we don't really need a running back as much if we have a guy like Deebo.
Who are you gonna do that? Who else does that though?
Like Cordero Patterson would be one of them.
Kamara does it.
Kamara.
It is a unique little like.
I mean, there's
athlete.
a few of them right now, but I feel
Yeah.
like they're going to start to be more.
It was Taysom Hill. His contract was all fucking weird, man. That was just a weird deal. That's such an odd thing. I wonder, because they have such an opportunity to win. They haven't paid Justin Jefferson yet. They cut Adam Thielen earlier this year. That's who's that guy?
DJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, they have Hawkinson,
Mhm.
but they paid him, right? He's paid. Poor Jack's over here looking up 6 things at once.
Was earning his keep.
They're working right now.
All right, so the exclusive tag. Under this designation, the player cannot negotiate with other teams. However, the price is higher. Under the exclusive franchise tag, the 1-year salary for the player is either the average of the top 5 salaries of the player's position. We kind of knew that one. By using, a player can still end up playing for a different team during the season, but only via a trade.
So only via trade. Seems like the key little phrase there.
Yeah. Type in Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook.
Why?
Because there could be would the Raiders rescind Josh Jacobs' franchise tag and sign Dalvin Cook? All right, so this is per Pro Football Talk, PFT. Under the rules of the CBA, the Raiders use the franchise tag to keep running back Josh Jacobs in place for at least another season at $10.1 million. The Raiders also could, under those same rules, rescind the franchise tag. The question is, would they? If Jacobs won't accept their best offer on a long-term deal, the deadline for that is July 17th, as we all have said. It would make sense to consider their options, and they could, in theory, pursue Dalvin Cook as a potential replacement for Jacobs.
But can they get out of the franchise?
I just said, they could rescind it. They could rescind the tag. So that would make it interesting, because I know Josh just came out and talked about the positioning he's going is he's wanting to get a long-term deal done in his favor, obviously. The reason he won't sign right now is because I want to say he has said it's bigger than him. It's more about just him as a running back. He's trying to help the running back market, which I think a lot of guys are doing. I want to say Saquon's doing that. What was the recent headline on Saquon? He hasn't participated in any of the OTAs or anything yet.
Yeah, he missed mandatory minicamp, right? Which per the new CBA is an automatic fine. They can't rescind the fine. The team can't. Yeah, that stays. It's like $80,000-$90,000 fine.
What's the fine per day that you miss?
I don't know the per day. I think when I missed mandatory minicamp, it was $90,000. They just
Altogether
for those 3 days. So whatever that is, so $30,000 a day. I know. I went to John Robbins' office too, and I was like, hey. Was he right after that year? And I was like, you mind if I get some of that back? And he's like, it's a precedence. We have to set for everybody else. No. And I ended up talking to him more, and he's like, we'll give you $5,000 back.
Jack, what's the paragraph right up above that? The first thing. Right. So when you're looking at this Saquon Barkley article, courtesy of is this NFL.com? Yeah, NFL.com. The first thing that comes to mind when a player suggests he might sit out is Le'Veon Bell. When he did it back when he was on the Steelers, he skipped the 2018 season during a contract negotiation. Bell got paid by the Jets the following year before he quickly washed out of the NFL. Never the same back as he was before skipping a year. Bell has since said he regrets the decision. So they obviously brought that up to Saquon, and Saquon had talked about. He said, I think when you sit back and you look at it, there's obviously there's a situation where it happened with Le'Veon, and some people say it didn't work out for him or whatever. I think I would have to sit down and actually go through that whole process and think about that whole process when that situation comes up, if it comes up. For me, it's like you got until July 27th. They could say what they want. We can say what we want. At the end of the day, I can only focus on the little things, and I can focus on the moment. And I think I've been vocal before to you guys that I'm the type of guy that just lives in the now, just one day at a time. Now, if that day comes up and I have to sit down and have that conversation, then I would sit down and have that conversation. We'll see what's the best plan for me to do. I personally think with Saquon and the Giants, that something will get done. Maybe not as friendly as he'd like, but I think that's something they want to get done.
It all depends on what he's willing to give up, though.
Right.
If it's not, the key thing is like it's not as friendly as he would like, and if he's sitting there and he thinks he deserves all that, which a guy like Saquon does, right? He has an ACL in year 2, comes back. We don't know. He was next year after that,
2 years in a row.
Balled last year.
Right.
Came back, did what he was supposed to do when he was coming out of Penn State. Now it's like, all right, do you take the risk to pay that guy? And when truly he was a foundational piece of bringing the Giants back to a playoff contending team.
Yeah, Saquon's a stud, man. I mean, he can line up outside at the 1 spot as a receiver.
Which is wild.
And be in the backfield, but he's a stud. I know that there's like something that every player, I feel like they go through, like when they're going through big contract negotiations, is a lot of the misleading reports that always leak out about the player, because the front office and everybody, the front office has direct lines with the media, right?
Yeah.
So when the media is writing reports, they're going to write it in ways that it seems like the player's sitting out, they're holding out, they're doing things, they're like, hey, they're not talking to us.
Yeah.
They make it seem like it's more the player versus the team. And I know like Saquon, he was talking about, he's like, I would like to address that. I feel like there's been some things out there that's been misleading. You know, obviously the sources or the stories that have been out there, but I've been public. I came out public and I've been open about it. I want to be a Giant for life. This is where I want to be. And at the end of the day, it's all about respect. That's really what it is. Did you ever go through anything like that when you were going through your negotiations?
No.
Like any reporting, say PK or anybody writing articles that made it seem like Taylor's, you know, holding out or not showing face?
There was a bunch of backlash when I held out for mandatory minicamp, but it really was, you know, they're trying to figure it out. We think it'll get done, blah, 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 that type of thing. Now I'm offensive linemen, especially left tackles, are in a much different situation than running backs are in, because we as a culture or a group have been proven we get better as we get older in a lot of ways, more savvy, more technical, those types of things. So there wasn't a lot of like thought of risk of what's going to happen if you pay me. And so the whole thing for me is way different than the running back market. Sitting out, there was definitely a bunch of articles that came out. Nothing that I can like truly put my finger on that I remember like being feeling slighted by. But I remember talking to my agents and they're like, hey, when you sit out, this is what's going to happen. The Titans are going to release, hey, we offered this guy this amount of money. We're going to tell them that, you know, he's leaving all this on the table. We're doing our part. He's not doing his part, that type of thing. And you just got to be able to be okay with that type of stuff.
And know that, and just understand that it's going to happen because it is part of the game.
Yeah, it's part of the game, but you also got to figure out like what's best for you. I remember when I was in the contract negotiations and we recently became friends. We were very fresh in our friendship. You were telling me you should hold out for guaranteed money. And Will goes, you should get all fully guaranteed contract. And I'm like, Will, that's got to happen to the quarterbacks first. Kirk Cousins did it. And then after that,
I'd point the finger too in your position.
You point the finger at me?
Yeah, no, I'm saying if I was you, I'd be like, somebody else has to do it first.
Yeah.
Could have been a lot of strength in being the pioneer, the trailblazer.
We can be trailblazers and other things. We're doing it right now.
Trim the 5 years down the 3, take fully guaranteed, maybe take a little bit less ceiling for that guarantee to set an example.
I got what I needed.
Yeah, right.
I'll let the other boys fight that out.
Yeah. Now you can
At
become
their battle. You guys do your thing.
Become the like, hey, this is what we need to happen.
You
If
guys
they
need
want
to
to really
do
see
this.
this market change. Yeah.
You want to see this market change?
Yeah.
Which is wild because the money's higher than it's ever been.